Hello, my friend, and thank you for listening to the 246th episode of Congressional Dish. I'm your host, Jennifer Briney. Today, I am going to be telling you about something that I found inside of the BIF, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Framework, which is better known as the Infrastructure Law, which was signed on November 15th, 2021. So the part of the new infrastructure law that I researched for you today is the part that starts the process of creating a Appalachian Storage Hub for petrochemicals. So specifically what the new law does is it allows the Appalachian Regional Commission, which is made up of a dude picked by the president, and the governors of 13 states, the Appalachian states. Well, it allows that commission to make grants, so give money, and to, quote, enter into contracts or otherwise provide amounts to individuals or entities, unquote, for projects to research the economic impact of a ethane storage hub in the Appalachian region that will, quote, help establish a regional energy hub in the Appalachian region for natural gas and natural gas liquids, including hydrogen produced from the steam methane reforming of natural gas feedstocks, unquote. Now, President Trump's Energy Secretary Rick Perry used our tax money to produce a report for Congress about the idea of an Appalachian storage hub for petrochemicals, and it identified 3 ideal locations. 3 locations identified, by the way, by the West Virginia University Energy Institute, the organization started by that guy you just heard from, Brian Anderson, who Rick Perry would bring into the Trump administration 2 years later. But the 3 locations that the study listed as ideal were the Kanawha River Valley in West Virginia, where the authors of the study said, quote, comprises the most storage opportunities of any prospect evaluated for this study, unquote. There's also an area south of Pittsburgh that includes portions of southeastern Ohio, southwestern Pennsylvania, and north central West Virginia. And then there's also a strip of West Virginia that runs along the west side of Pittsburgh towards Youngstown, Ohio, an area that includes both sides of the Ohio River, and that's where the Shell ethane cracker plant already is. And I just want to note that all 3 of these areas would put chemical processing plants, ethane crackers, and pipelines under major rivers, aka sources of drinking water. Here's Stephen Hedrick, the CEO of the Appalachian Development Group, testifying in 2016.
Now, we would propose that the corridors naturally created by the Ohio and Kanawha rivers be utilized as a platform for a substantial pipe system that will support the distribution of key raw material and intermediate constituents, including but not limited to methane, ethane, ethylene, propane, propylene, and chlorine, all of which are significant building blocks to the petrochemical industry and hence our society. We therefore must have substantial underground storage of the highest value and broadly used raw materials, specifically ethane, ethylene, and propane, and butane if we're able, and create a built-for-purpose Appalachian Storage Hub. This can be safely and efficiently done in naturally occurring underground caverns, in depleted natural gas extraction points, or even in depleted salt domes. In fact, the brightest minds in geological formations are currently studying the best locations for the hub.
And you just heard the 3 that they came up with. I also want to note that all 3 of those locations involve West Virginia. And sure enough, it's West Virginia's lawmakers that have been pushing for this project in Congress. The bill that became law as a piece of the infrastructure law was written by Representative David McKinley, a Republican congressman from West Virginia. He's been trying to get us taxpayers to pay to research this idea for 3 consecutive Congresses, and he hasn't been working on this alone. In the 115th Congress, both David McKinley and Senator Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia introduced a similar bill to the one that became law called the Appalachian Ethane Storage Hub Study Act of 2017. And in fact, in the hearing that I watched from 2016 that Shelley Moore Capito was the chairman of, she bragged about trying to dingleberry that into an energy bill.
So using ethane from natural gas as a feedstock means that chemical companies can choose to operate in West Virginia due to the enormous benefits of being right on top of the resource. That's why, again, I included language in the energy bill that would require the Department of Energy and Commerce to conduct a study to look at the feasibility of an ethane storage and distribution hub here in Appalachia, in West Virginia or in the region.
But the West Virginia lawmakers were not done. Now, I already told you about that bill introduced that same year by Senator Joe Manchin, which would have made the dirty-ass fossil poison chemical hub project and others like it eligible for Department of Energy loan guarantees that are supposed to be for clean energy projects. You should know that Representative David McKinley introduced that same bill in the House of Representatives. Then, after that Congress was over and none of those bills became law, in the 116th Congress, Senator Joe Manchin introduced the Appalachian Energy for National Security Act, which would have ordered a rigged study on the hub project from a national security perspective, requiring the study to look into benefits the hub would provide to national security and the risks posed by not doing it. And then that same year, in 2017, Senator Shelley Moore Capito introduced the Appalachian Energy and Manufacturing Infrastructure Revitalization Act, which would have rushed the permits for the hub. But we now know that more recently, as confirmed by Keith Schneider and ProPublica, that the person taking the lead in pushing for this Appalachian Storage Hub project in this Congress has been Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. When asked about his concerns about the dangers experienced in Mont Belvieu caused by pretty much the same project he was proposing for his own constituents' neighborhoods, he refused to address them at all. Instead, Joe Manchin said, quote, "I'm committed to the development of the proposed Appalachian Storage Hub, particularly in this moment for its economic development benefits for rural West Virginia, the greater Appalachian region, and our entire nation," unquote. Which is political weasel wording for, I only care about the money that can be made by rich titans of industry like me and my family members. Because in case you didn't know, Joe Manchin is the founder of a private coal company that his son has been running ever since Daddy Joe became a politician. Although Joe still owns millions of dollars in his coal company's stock and collects dividends from it every year. Joe Manchin's daughter is Heather Manchin Bresch, who was a featured main character in a Congressional Dish episode, number 134, because she was hauled into Congress as the CEO of Mylan Incorporated, a company that under her leadership was price gouging Americans with severe allergies by raising the price of life-saving EpiPens by over 600% just because they could. The Manchin family is literally one of the greediest, corporately corrupted families in America. And to prove it, let's just take a quick look at Senator Manchin's campaign contributions, because they are gross. For this upcoming election, Joe Manchin is the member of Congress who has taken the most money from people in the coal, natural gas, mining, and oil and gas industries. All of those being generous industries when it comes to legal bribes for politicians. They give the most money to Joe Manchin. And over the course of his Senate career, Joe Manchin's campaign has accepted at least $1.7 million that we know of from just the oil and gas industry alone. Here's Joe Manchin in that 2016 hearing.
In 2016 Annual Energy Outlook, the EIA projected that even in a clean power plant scenario, coal and natural gas will make up approximately half of our electric generation mix in 2040. We talk about deniers. There's those who deny that there's climate change going on. And there's those who deny that we're going to be needing fossil for the next 2, 3, or 4 decades.
That's who Joe Manchin is. And it's no secret in these United States that Joe Manchin has been able to get his way on all legislation this year, holding the Democratic Party's agenda hostage since the minute President Biden took office. His oily hands were all over the infrastructure law. So to find that $25 million in tax money plus unlimited amounts allowed from other sources will be spent studying setting the groundwork for his pet project, I obviously can't prove it, but I'm blaming this dingleberry's inclusion on him. But the research for the hub being funded by the infrastructure law doesn't mean that it will ever get built. The only thing I think we can conclude will happen is that in a couple of years, there will be research published talking about how great an Appalachian Storage Hub would be for the country and region. And I think that's a foregone conclusion because of how the law structures the research. The infrastructure law doesn't order the Biden administration to conduct the research, or even to contract out the research to the private sector. Instead, the research will be funded and the contracts to conduct the research awarded by the Appalachian Regional Commission. That commission, again, is co-chaired by one person selected by the president, the other co-chair is selected by the governors of the Appalachian states, and the rest of the commission is made up of those governors. Right now, the co-chair selected by the governors is Republican Governor Larry Hogan of Maryland. And despite being a Republican, which is a party that I have personally witnessed in Congress, that has been writing laws to benefit the fossil fuel industry for as long as I've been paying attention. Well, despite being a member of that party, Governor Hogan has actually proven himself to be more considerate of environmental factors in his decision-making. For example, he recently voted against a proposed gas pipeline that would have been built under the Potomac River and therefore threatened the drinking water of about 6 million people. That was after intense and sustained public pressure to kill the pipeline. But the point is that he's not a typical Republican when it comes to rubber stamping the hopes and dreams of the fossil fuel industry. However, the other co-chair, the one ironically selected by the so progressive Joe Biden administration, well, the other co-chair is, get this, Gail Connolly Manchin, Senator Joe Manchin's wife. So how do you think she's going to feel about the Appalachian Storage Hub? And then there's the rest of the commission, which is dominated by Republican politicians. There's 8 Republicans to 4 Democrats. And so when I think about the $25 million of our tax money, plus God only knows how much private money will be spent on this research, my crystal ball says that the research, which will be contracted out by Joe Manchin's wife and friends, I think it's safe to conclude that it's likely to be conducted by people predisposed to support the idea of an Appalachian Storage Hub because of the people who are going to be ordering these studies. And so that will come out, but then what, No matter what the tax money funded research concludes, there are some indisputable facts that will make the Appalachian Storage Hub difficult to actually build. Facts so indisputable that even the study created by the fossil fuel corrupted Trump administration had to discuss them. One of the factors is that, first of all, constructing the hub will obviously be expensive. The Shell ethane cracker alone, the one that's almost finished, that one is reported to cost somewhere between $6 and $10 billion. To build a hub on the scale of the Mont Belvieu hub, we would need to build gas processing plants and fractionation plants and the huge chemical storage facilities and underground caves. We'd probably need more ethane crackers and plants for processing the other chemicals and all the transportation infrastructure, including a lot of pipelines to move all the gas and liquids and chemicals around. And with all that new industry, we would need new power plants to handle the increased electricity demand and new roads to handle all of the increased activity in whatever towns are in line to be poisoned with all this new gas and plastic processing. And when you look at the big picture of all of this, will people make money from it? Oh, yes, there will be jobs. But those jobs will have to be subsidized by our tax money to make this happen. As has already been proven with this new infrastructure law, the private sector isn't even funding the research phase of this themselves. So it's going to cost us a lot of money. That's guaranteed. And then there's this madness. As admitted even by the Trump administration, we are already producing more ethylene in the United States than we need and are projected to continue doing so until at least 2040. And this is without any new infrastructure at all. The Trump administration report said, quote, "The rise in production capacity of petrochemicals is expected to outgrow domestic demand. If the industry seeks to avoid a reduction in an average utilization, surplus ethylene derivative supply will need to find export markets," unquote. So let's remember this when we hear how important an Appalachian Storage Hub would be for our domestic industry. The industry already has more petrochemicals than they need. The plastics industry in the Appalachian region simply want to pay less for those products. They want to lower the shipping costs for their materials. But the purpose of increasing production of the chemicals that make plastics is to increase exports of those chemicals and their plastics. How does increased exports by multinational chemical and plastics corporations help the American people? Well, I'll tell you, for the vast majority of us, it doesn't. We assume the risks to our homes, to our air, to our drinking water, and most of us will not benefit at all, just like the residents in Mont Belvieu who don't make money by working at the petrochemical hub. The Americans who benefit from this are those that make money in the industry through their jobs, although even those people have to live nearby and they do assume the physical risks. But they will benefit too from the money. But most of the benefits will be reaped by people wealthy enough to own those multinational corporations' stock. But let's just take a beat and say that we are yacht-owning super douchebags like Joe Manchin and his family, who think that what's good for stockholders is good for the world. And let's say that we support creating this giant storage and trading hub so that the gas and plastics industries can export the chemicals we risk our health for around the world for profit. Let's wander into that fantasy land for just a few minutes. Even if we pretend that exports by multinationals are worth the risks, there's a good chance that there won't be enough buyers because plenty of other countries are making ethylene too. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, North America is number 2 in ethylene production. The Asian countries are number 1. The Asian market used to be the market that bought most of the ethylene exported from the United States, but now they're damn close to being totally self-sufficient in the ethylene department. And so why would we increase supply of something that our biggest customer no longer needs? There are also countries in this world that care about how fast the climate is changing and are not going to buy our gas or the products derived from it. So Ireland, for example, is considering banning fracked gas. The French government has already blocked a contract to buy liquefied natural gas from the United States multinationals because we allow uncontrolled methane emissions, like from flaring. The International Energy Agency's Net Zero by 2050 energy sector plan, published less than a year ago, concluded that the world should add, quote, no new oil and gas fields approved for development, unquote. And I read an International Energy Agency report just a few years ago, and they were calling gas a bridge fuel. Now they are saying no more gas. So things are changing in this world. And so why would we fund and risk our health for a project that would expand fracking in order to increase production of a chemical that our country already has more than enough of and that the world is shifting away from?
We're surrounded now by liars coming at us through our TV screens.
We don't have a domestic spying program.
They're content to fight in black and white despite the many in-betweens. We got a president who plays with the facts. And then he waves a flag to cover his tracks. As if a lie is alright, in the end he'll justify the means. Now we are so damn tired of being lied to.
The polar ice caps aren't going away.
We don't think we can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies. But we're not keeping quiet anymore. We are so damn tired of being lied to.
Government jobs consume the profits of the private sector.
We don't think we can deny it anymore. You can stick to your story if you think it flies. But we're not keeping quiet anymore. Now we're not keeping quiet.
These bills represent common sense, bipartisan solutions that actually solve problems.